A very good evening to all our viewers, and welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Toiwan Jabala, your host. Tonight on the show, we are joined by Ombudsman Basilius Dyakugha. He is Ombudsman of Namibia and has been in that office for nearly a year. I think next month will mark his exact year in office. So welcome to the show. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think the first thing really that I need to establish with you, Basilius, is the mandate of your office, because it's some people say that the office of the Ombudsman in Namibia is the same as the office of the prosecutor, public prosecutor in South Africa, while some confuse it with the role of the ACC. If you can clear that ambiguity for me.
Yes, thank you. It is very important to continue educating our population, the people of Namibia, because we tend to, when you are a neighbor to a big brother like South Africa, you tend always to relate things, to compare things to that country. But there is a very big difference between the two institutions, offices. The one in Namibia is an office. It's an ombudsman. It's not even an office. It's just an ombudsman.
Yeah.
And then in South Africa, they created the office of the public protector.
Yes.
Now, it's actually two terminologies that actually have different meanings.
Yeah.
But you have to look at the source of these institutions. Namibia, the constitution talks about ombudsman, and if you read the Article 89, sub-article 2, it tells you his powers, his independence. It's actually the same language used also in Article 78, sub 2 of the judiciary. When you hear about the independence of the judiciary, the language in the Constitution is actually word by word, comma by comma, exactly the same as the one in the sub-article 2 of Article 89 of the Ombudsman. So it's an independent person who has certain mandate.
Yeah.
And those mandate is also clearly stipulated in the Constitution. The Ombudsman Act is just a copy and paste from the Ombudsman and then put it in the Act. Somehow along the way, because originally the Ombudsman was having mandate on corruption also.
Yeah.
But somewhere during 2005, 2004, somewhere there, the mandate of corruption was then removed from the office of the Ombudsman because of international conventions. There is an international convention on corruption, which every country has to adhere to, and Namibia is a member of that international convention. And that convention actually wanted more power to go to this body, to the issue of investigating corruption. Now the provisions of South Africa, if you read their laws, is still in the original form where the Ombudsman was. Yeah, the public protector's mandate in South Africa encompassed also corruption, and then maladministration. So we have done away with that combination of two mandates.
So what are you left
two
with?
Functions. So the Ombudsman of Namibia now is only left with the three main mandates. And they are still also highlighted in the Constitution and in the Ombudsman's Act. That is human rights, maladministration, and protection of the environment. Now, only environment is straightforward to understand by anybody. But the aspect of maladministration And the human rights is really, you have to go into little details to explain what it means, because there's a lot of it, of some small things in its meaning.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we do when we do outreach programs in the regions, or when I go to meet the regional leadership of the regions, I explain this aspect. Yeah.
When you speak about independence of the ombudsman, well, in your own words, what does it mean?
Well, what it means is that you must just read the law. It doesn't have a really complicated meaning. That the ombudsman is only answerable to the law and to the constitution. You just follow the law when you are doing your work. No one must tell you as how you should do your work. That's independent. Yes.
It's very interesting then, because I mean, you see the reason I'm asking about independence is because there are things that there are inherent things that will not make you very independent completely. Funding, for example. They say what is the English expression? He who pays you
must control you.
Controls you,
or
something
must dictate
to that effect.
Or must dictate.
Yeah, exactly. Who funds your office?
Well, the office of the ombudsman, or the ombudsman, is a public institution.
Yeah.
It is government who's supposed to fund its own institution. The challenge now is that since independence, or since its establishment in 1990, it has been treated administratively like a directorate of a Ministry of Justice, because the staff are from the officials of the Ministry of Justice. And that is actually the challenge that the office has been experiencing all these years, because it then has to rely on the Ministry of Justice for it to do its work, which is correct in your words, that that way somehow the independence is compromised. Yeah, and that happened to the judiciary, for that matter.
Yeah.
Judiciary has been with the Ministry of Justice for 25 years.
Yeah.
And until they realize that the aspect of separation of power is being compromised here, because Ministry of Justice is the executive, and the judiciary is a branch of government also on its own. So, but they have separated in 2015. So this should also be done with the Ministry of, with the Ombudsman. Yeah.
So who are your principals? I mean, we all report to someone. In your case, you don't have a board of directors or anything like that. So who are your principals?
Unfortunately, you find some institutions that do not have those set up. And one of those institutions is the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman only writes reports to the Speaker of the National Assembly. The reason is because the Ombudsman, in essence, is actually checking on the executive functions, that they must, everything they do, it must be fair and transparent.
Yeah.
And the National Assembly, or Parliament for that matter, is actually having also the same mandate. They do the oversight to the executive.
Yeah.
And for them now to be informed of what is happening on the ground, the Ombudsman is there. So I just don't have the bosses over me. Like I said, I'm just answerable to the law, but I have to work in cooperation with the National Assembly, where they need the information that the executive has to be taken to task for not actually doing their work fairly in terms of the law. Yeah.
Does it, I think it's a good principle. I think there's a lot, personally, I think there's a lot of institutions in this country that should be reporting directly to Parliament only. I think, for example, that the ACC, the ECN, I believe personally that they must strictly report to Parliament because we have the commissioners of the ECN, for example, have to be sort of rubber stamped by the president, who sometimes has direct interest in the elections, sometimes as a participant, maybe in an upcoming election or something like that. So I find it a bit strange. But I mean, the danger again with that is obviously that you need to account. In your case, if we want to hold you accountable, they say, who watches the watchdog? We are the watchdog, but who watches the watchdog? As they do with us in the media and stuff like that. So if there were to be perceived transgressions on your part, who is going to hold you accountable?
Well, it's a very, very interesting question, but the Ombudsman is not the only person in that position. The PG is also in that position.
Yeah.
And you must remember the PG is also a constitutional office. The AG is also in that position. The whole thing here is really these people are appointed through the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission. So the Judicial Service Commission is still having an eye on your performance in terms of whether you are actually doing your work in terms of the law. So I think that it answers your question.
Yes, no, it does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Now, related to independence of your mandate, it's also the issue of impartiality. I know that you are emphasizing very much on strictly answering to the law only. But as they say, the law is not. They say it's not an art of mathematical precision. How do you ensure that you remain impartial in the pursuit of your mandate?
Well, this is basically why the Constitution have dictated that the person appointed as an ombudsman must be an admitted trained lawyer.
Yeah.
So that because lawyers are actually, during their trainings, they are also trained that you, as a lawyer, you just have to be allegiance to the law and to the system. But when you are now serving in these portfolios, you are neither for or against, because your role is just to look into the law. Now, the impartiality aspect is very crucial because that gives you that trust from the audience or the population that you are indeed actually there for everybody, So that's actually the element of the relevance of the office of the Ombudsman is the impartiality, the independence, and the transparent aspect and the confidentiality aspect also.
Yeah. Now, just when was it this year when you asked your office, and I have to commend you that you acted very swiftly when you were asked by the Namibia Economic Freedom Fighters to investigate the role, if any, of President Hage Geingob in the Pala issue, especially the detention of those suspects and their alleged torture. And you came out and said that you did not have the mandate. If you can expand on that, what did you mean?
Yes.
Because it's human rights.
Yes, it is human rights. I mean, everything in this planet Earth is just human rights. But you must understand that the law has different branches, areas.
Yeah.
The other laws are criminal law, the other law administrative law, and the others are civil. So my mandate is mainly on administrative law.
Yeah.
When it comes to criminal law, that is another office mandate. That is the office of the Prosecutor General, or the PG herself, and then supported by the, of course, the Anti-Corruption Commission. When it comes to civil matters, it is actually between the two parties. If you have borrowed each other money and your contract is not working, you take each other to court, and the court is there to adjudicate on it. So what happened in the Palapala matter, if you just follow the language there, is mainly they use terminologies that are criminal law related. Theft of money, concealment of information, or kidnapping, crossing the border illegally, all those things. These are all criminal elements in terms of our law and even elsewhere in the world. So the Ombudsman has no single mandate really to deal with the criminal aspect of any activities of a citizen, despite the fact that it was referring to the president, because the president is also a public official in terms of our law. But if it was an administrative matter, it would have been followed within my mandate. So the question is now, how would it have then fall within my mandate if it was the president? Because of course the president may appoint somebody unprocedural, which has happened in this country when the former president, I think the founding president, appointed the ombudsman unprocedural. That decision has to be reversed when it was picked up by the relevant officers and they voice it about. So this is not to say that because it was the president. No, if it was the president but the administrative matter, I would have definitely looked into the matter.
Okay. Before we go on a break, I'm just leaving you with. I would want you to, after the break, for you to give me some sort of typical examples of what would constitute an administrative matter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We go for a quick break and return.
AgriMonitor is jou weeklikse landboukundige program wat jou die jongste nuus in die landbouverwante bedryf en onderwerpe wat daaraan gekoppel is bring. Vir enige advertensie of nuusverwante navraag, kontak agrimonitor@synergy.com.na.
We continue our conversation here with Ombudsman Basilius Dyakugha. Bas, that aspect, what is it that will constitute an administrative law-related matter that then would fall under your mandate?
Yeah, maladministration is really a complex concept to understand. You will understand it when you are actually in the area or in the field of looking at maladministration aspect.
Yeah.
Because there is maladministration and malpractice. So it's cosmetic to define the two, but it's more or less the same, but not similar. In law, we have funny way of explaining things. It is where the fairness aspect comes in. Because the concept fairness means public bodies, when they make decisions, they must follow a fair process, fair procedures, from the beginning and to the end. So that line is where you will trace the maladministration aspect. And also it includes anything that relates to public officials, whether you are procuring, whether you are appointing someone, whether you are coming to work and leave work. So all those aspects fall within maladministration. Particularly my challenge in the office, when I came in the office, what I found is that public officials, they do not understand that this thing of advertising a position, you conduct the interview to the end, and then later you see that the winning candidate is not your favorable candidate or the preferred candidate. You want to reverse the process and say, no, we have to start again, or then we have to take number 2 or number 3. So that process, in the meaning of maladministration, it falls within that concept of maladministration.
It's very interesting, Basilius, that you say that, because I was actually going to ask you exactly more on the aspect of employment. The way, because every other day, we in the media are reporting about how people are being skipped in interviews and how institutions seem to already have a person in mind and only advertise because somehow the law requires that you follow that process, but in truth they have already decided who they want. I mean, it's such a common thing in this country. It has become almost a tradition now. How is your office handling this kind of things? Because we want to see action, people actually being taught a lesson so that others learn not to follow that example.
Yes, that's a good question. I must say that we have a lot of those challenges in the office, but we are actually also gaining momentum or getting results in our effort, particularly in public institutions. Mainly we also look just on public institutions. A good example here is which are institutions that are cooperating is the Namibian Training Authority and some parastatals. But the institutions that are actually difficult and in fact refusing to cooperate is regional councils and municipalities, because in there they are relying on the rules, the local authority regulations, because in the local authority regulations there is a rule there that allow management committee to sit in the interview and monitor the process or observe the process, and that way they form their opinions, you know, as who is best candidate, you know. And I took that issue up with the ministry, and I actually advised them to amend that regulation so that they remove that aspect of politicians sitting in an interview and observe the interview process, because that is creating the conflict between the administrative officials and the politicians. But other than that, the other issue is also this concept of we want to employ our people. They use the word our people, meaning referring to the locals. And have addressed this issue in many regions that I went, because 32 years after independence, it's very tough for you now to tell who is from your region, because the Constitution says, give us the right to live wherever you want to live in Namibia. And for that matter, some people of my surname, you will find them either in Omaheke region. Since independence, his parents has been there. So what do you consider that person? Is he not local, or is not your people? So those are the dynamics that the politicians must think about, because when they do campaign to get into power, they use these things, we will employ you. And then after that, they want to implement it. And that's where the challenge is.
Yeah.
They forgot that the very same person they are considering is not one of them, was also a voter.
Yeah,
You understand?
Yeah.
So those are the challenges. It's a very tough one. I think the politicians, the ministry is going to do something about it.
Yeah. It's a very good example that you gave now of people saying, I know people, if you go, you spoke about Omaheke. We know, for example, and I'm sorry that I have to mention this surname, but we know, for example, the Waiteles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They are natives
of
Omaheke. Yeah. But I suppose they speak Oshiwambo, and if you are there, and then they say, oh no, our people, loosely translated would mean the Herero-speaking people, for example, in Omaheke, because it's predominantly Herero. Yeah. And maybe the Tswanas and stuff like that, and because that person, no one in Hangwena knows him. Exactly. So they are not our people. Sure. They are not from here. And then where does he end? So it becomes a bit problematic. How does it work with your office? If do you, in situations like that, are you empowered to initiate investigations, or does it work like I saw there with the ACC? You have someone has to report the matter first before you embark on it.
No, we with my office we had. It has been a tradition, even from my predecessor, that some cases we can investigate them from our own motion without actually the matter being reported, as long as it's just of national concern. Yeah. That is actually allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the one of the you see the difficulty that I have, Mr. Dyakugha, is I think your office has a very, very important role, and I hope, or it seems like you understand exactly it occupies a very, very important space in our country, because there's so many things, there's so much abuse going on in the country. People being denied jobs, for example, because they simply do not happen to be members of the ruling party. If you apply for a CEO position at a parastatal, they punch in the SWAPO database to see if your name pops up, whether you're a card-carrying member of the party. If you are not, then you are out. That can never be fair. What if I'm not just in politics, but I qualify and willing really to move my country forward in that capacity?
Yeah, no, the people who are experiencing those type of challenges or difficulties in getting employment because of their political background or affiliations, they are welcome to approach my office. We have handled a few of those matters. And it's just that there is no perfect system in the world when it comes to selection of the best people in practice. Other system, they don't really do the round table or the boardroom interviews that we have here in Namibia. Other countries, they do it in individual interviews. You will be sent to 5 managers, those 5 managers sitting in their office, they'll interview you there. But it's still difficult to tell whether it is the best system or not the best system. So interviews are actually out of all the other system. It's the better way to do things. But like I said, of course, that is actually happening. Like I said, it is the same thing that we talked about earlier on, of particularly when it comes to senior positions in the municipalities and the regional councils, because these town councils or the municipality authority, local authorities, they want the people who are actually allegiance to their party or supporters of their party to be the CEO or to be the manager in what department. So it is there, but people are invited to approach my office, and then we will assist them.
Yes, you are a product of public interviews in your current position. It was sort of the first of its kind in our country, and it was so transparent in that sense. Do you think that, because of course people are saying this constitutional offices, maybe it should be done that way, but do you think that it must be expanded beyond that and just really have get into a habit of those kind of interviews going forward in some positions?
Yeah, democracy is about really transparent and fairness, because what you need in the positions, unique positions like public offices, top public offices, is you want people who can tell the nation as what do they know about that area, the area of employment they are trying to aspire, and also the integrity of that individual, because in the formation of the questionnaires, I think the issues of integrity has also to be digged out, you know. The interview panel has to dig deeper to find out about the integrity of the individual, so that the public, they can then know that, okay, out of this candidate, we now have seen one who is actually having, because leadership is about integrity. There are two main ingredients of leadership: integrity and trust. Because if the public can trust you to be the leader in that position, then obviously they will also give their full cooperation to that institution.
Yeah,
yeah. I definitely agree that democracy, since Namibia is a democratic country, public interviews is actually the way to go.
Yeah. The one aspect again, Basilius, that you spoke about when we were talking about the pillars of your mandate, you spoke about environment. What are your views on the oil exploration activities in your region there? It happens to be your region also.
Yes. Well, there are other institutions that are actually, in terms of our law, who are assigned to deal with this aspect of environmental assessment, as you call it, because they are specialized in that area. And oil exploration that you mentioned is one of that tricky area, because you need expertise for you really to tell whether environment or water, underground water, will be polluted. My office is actually like closely monitoring the situation. The environmental commissioner, which is in the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, is actually where we're supposed to put our trust in him, that he must do the right job. By when he issues this environmental clearance certificate, he must be well informed by the expert, because he doesn't need to have the expert in his office, but he can hire them. He can source them from outside, so that they can then go dig deeper and find out what is actually the potential of environmental pollution or environmental hazard that this project can cause. And from where we stand now, we are told that the activities there are actually safe. It has been done elsewhere in the world, and for now we just have to rely on that information from the environmental commissioner. But not only that, I have also to go and see for myself. I went to that site and I saw for myself about what you can see with your naked eye. Yes, you know, oil drilling or borehole drilling is really a big activity. There's a lot of activities taking place there. But from what I could see there with my naked eye is that it's work in progress. We are not. I have not made my conclusion that there is no pollution happening there, because when I was there, I went to the site which they have closed. They have rehabilitated it, and we have been taken through that the area which was an activity of drilling. They are now an agriculture project there. They are planting several type of fruits there, or vegetables, and they are testing those vegetables to the laboratories. So my office has been now giving them the directives that I want the results of those tests so that we can be convinced that indeed the soil that we're having those water or the waste from the borehole which was there, because it is now not there anymore. It's now a garden which is there now. So I have given them that directive that they must share those results with me, so that we can be convinced that indeed it is safe. The activity that is happening there is safe. But not only that, they have also showed me that anything that to do with waste management in that area is done by a company which they sourced from Vendu, Rent a Drum. Is the one managing their waste areas in the whole activities there. So what is left is actually the bigger issue. The one is if when you get through the water aquifer, the underground water aquifer, to get to the oil, that one is the one which is technical.
Yeah, indeed. We go for the last break before we return for the last part of the show.
I studied medicine.
I studied geology.
I studied a Bachelor of Science.
You start to heal people, touch patients, you touch lives, you save lives, you realize this is really what you want to do and you never get tired.
Having graduated from the University of Namibia, I was able to open my own law firm and help people attend to their legal problems.
Let's do the things that must be done and make it great.
If you want to do it, just do it.
That's what I wanted to do.
So the sky is the limit.
My UNAM, my pride.
For news-related or advertising queries, contact irongotalk@synergy.com.na. Irongo Talk, our community, your news.
We continue the conversation now. You see what I'm getting from your last answer on the environment is that essentially the office, the Ombudsman, is essentially an institution of lawyers, human rights experts and stuff like that, and that you are relying on the Environmental Commissioner for some of these things, such as the oil exploration in Kavango. Why is that mandate with your office? Well, why do you have the environmental aspect there Because it just sounds too far removed from the kind of typical work that you would do.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because you must remember that maybe just a correction also there, that I don't have an environmental expert in my office. I do not even have an environmental desk in my office. When I came in the office, I'm trying to establish that environmental desk. Somebody who's just dedicated to environmental issues.
Yes.
Yeah, but you don't need to be really an environmental expertise to protect the environment.
Yeah.
So the Ombudsman has is having a unique position where if you don't have the skills in your office, you can source it. I can actually just instruct the ministry at the present moment in our situation to give me money so that I can pay an environmental specialist to look into the aspect of environmental issue. The reason why the framer of our constitution decided to put it in the Ombudsman's office is because the ministry is the executive branch. They are the one who actually execute and implement the law.
Yeah.
So their role is not much of concern in terms of solely to protect the environment, but also to bring development to the country. Now, doing two things together doesn't work well. So somebody has to watch how you are bringing that development, and that is the Ombudsman. Because you must remember, development and environmental doesn't go very well always. Some others are saying neither the damaging of the environment is good, neither is the development is actually good.
Yeah.
So you have to balance the two.
Yeah.
So I think that is why, although the environmental commissioner is in the ministry, but still the ombudsman, who's independent, has to watch what the environmental commissioner is doing. Because the environmental commissioner can be investigated by my office.
Yeah. You spoke about integrity and trust as some of the key elements any leader in your position must have. In terms of trust, your office, and I'm sorry that I'm bringing this up because you were not the ombudsman at the time, but there was a very sad case of Friedlander Tipo, who was shot dead at the SWAPO headquarters during a demonstration, the Struggle Kids. And to date, no one was ever held accountable because she was shot. We believe it was by the police, but because they couldn't identify the particular officer who shot off that bullet, somehow no one could be held accountable. I thought in a case like that, you could then hold the police as a collective responsible. And the woman died as if her life was worth nothing. How are we supposed to trust an office that handles things that way? What kind of energy do you bring to the office to restore that kind of trust?
I'm happy that you have asked that question. You see, nothing happened in this world that did not happen before elsewhere in the world. Criminal law is about bringing evidence to court to convict the suspect or the accused person that he or she has indeed committed the crime, no other person other than that person. So this is a reasonable doubt definition. And based on that aspect, it was difficult for the criminal justice system to take actually its processes. But that doesn't stop them from bringing in a civil suit. I think on your second question, holding the police accountable, in my view, I think it would have worked better. I have not had the opportunity to look at the findings of that investigation. I'm aware that it was done by the previous Ombudsman's office, the previous Ombudsman's team, but I have not seen that report since the file was closed.
Yeah.
So I think, in my view, if the criminal aspect cannot be pursued, you can still pursue the civil aspect.
Yeah, civil, yeah. And speaking of police brutality, there's so many cases, Basilius, that of police brutality we saw during the pandemic, how people were being made to swim in their own brews by the police and the army. We learned in the papers this week that Operation Kalahari is coming back, and people on social media were making jokes again about, oh, we'll be beaten up again, as if it's a normal thing to do. That cannot be correct. How do you, as an office, monitor and sort of police the police on human rights?
Yeah, it is a known fact that in terms of our law, one of the institutions that are established to protect human rights is the police. The police is a very important institution. It is a permanent state institution. Whether you change government, police will always be there. Yeah. So their primary role is really to protect the rights and properties of the people. It is very sad that when it's issues of maintaining law and order, then they violate human rights aspect. When I came to the office, I have came with a strategy to strengthen the relationship between ombudsmen and various public institutions. One of the is the police. We have established now a working relationship where senior officials in the office of the Inspector General, at the level of commissioners, and my office, senior officers in my office, they meet on a quarterly basis to discuss those challenges. Because in my office, I have found that more complaints is actually emanating from the police institution, the institutions that are supposed to protect the rights of these people. So it is actually a concern. And we will continue addressing that one with the incoming or the current Inspector General now, as how we should actually cooperate together to minimize those human rights abuse. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You issued a statement a few days ago about the situation in Katima Mulilo, where illegal infrastructures were they were destroyed, demolished by the town council and some private company there. So it's something that cannot be looked at in isolation. We have so many similar things across the country. Mm-hmm. People putting up illegal shacks because obviously they are desperate and they have no alternatives. They do not feel that their government or their leaders are providing them with any alternatives, and they resort to those activities. Home is one of the constitutional imperatives to say that people must live a dignified life, including shelter. And it's a never-ending trouble in our country. In what way do you think we can resolve this thing?
Yes, I read in the newspapers that the Katima Mulilo Town Council were not happy with my statement.
Yes.
And that is actually good for me, because it means that somehow they feel uncomfortable about what they did. What we need to understand is that all politicians, let me put it this way. There are two concepts: truth-telling and deception. And in the word deceptions, there are three words there: lying, spinning, and concealment. Politicians are more involved in spinning. They actually portray the good part of the story, but they don't really give you the negative part of the story. So what is happening in illegal infrastructure is not condoned, but this is a democracy. This is a country of rule of law. Yeah. We have had these things in the past. There is a very important case, actually two cases. One is actually related to the Katima Mlilo Town Council. The other one is about illegal squatters. Of 2009, it went to the Supreme Court. It's a Supreme Court case. The Shanika case and others versus the City of Windhoek police. That case, the issue was there were these illegal squatters who had a structure near Korehab Dam there. And the City of Windhoek wanted to demolish it. And then these legal squatters, they approached the court. And then the argument from the City of Windhoek, they said no, they cannot approach the court because they are illegal. Their hands are not clean. They can't go to the law. But the Supreme Court said no, it doesn't matter. Even if their hands are unclean, they still have to be treated humanely, you know. So that is the concept. Even a notorious criminal, when we arrest him, we don't really shambok him, we don't handcuff him, we don't throw him into the van like a bag of maize meal, you understand? So we still handle him like a human being. So this is the same concept I was approaching the issue of the Katima Mlilo Town Council. Yeah. To see the bulldozers in that action, whereas a few months behind, Katima Mlilo Town Council, they are the same people who were saying, no, we don't have machines to work on our roads or to repair our roads, but all of a sudden the machines are there now to destroy people's homes. Because what the Shanika case says is that when you handle it in a humane manner, you will then bring down these structures so that their materials cannot be destroyed, so that they can go and make use of the same materials elsewhere they are going. So this is where I come in and actually made that statement against the Katima Mlilo Town Council. And there is this important information that also came to my office. And this is where I talk about the Agnes Kahimbi Kashela case versus the Katima Mlilo Town Council. There are people who have proof that they got permission from the traditional authority to have land there. I think it's at Cowboy. And they were also, their structure were also destroyed. Now the question is, are you considering these people also illegal? Because the Agnes Kashela case is clear. If somebody has got the land from traditional authority, that person is legal there. So it's not really clear what has happened in Katima Mlilo Town Council there. Yeah. So that's why I made that statement.
Yeah. I think in conclusion then, Ombudsman, so in that case then, how do we handle these things? Because for me, what I wrote in my editorial, one of my editorials this week was to say that I do not understand how town councils, local authorities, allow people to put up structures. If a person put up a structure today, and you arrive today and remove it, I think it's humane. But to allow a person constructing a security guard, imagine how long they have to work to come up with that amount of money to buy corrugated iron sheets. And then they put up all these things, they buy poles, they do what. And then upon completion, you come and destroy things. And in the manner that you just mentioned, to say that it's not even in a manner to preserve these materials, but to destroy them, that can never be human.
100%, I agree with you. Because you see, this is my point also. Because when you know your property, the boundary of your town as a town, and you're supposed to monitor the activities within your own boundary. But this thing is only happened to buy votes, you understand? So that's why you see our towns today are actually not really as it were 20 years back, because most towns were really clean and in an orderly manner. When you want to buy a kapana, you know where to find a kapana. But today you can find a kapana in the middle of the CBD of any town because they want to buy votes. So you are right. People, they have been living there for 3 years, we are told. So where were the town council? Why don't you negotiate with this community, you know? If you can't really negotiate yourself, you can now bring in the third party who can assist you in negotiate with this. So this whole thing is just politics.
Absolutely.
Because the election is very far, so they could just do it with comfort. Nothing will happen.
Ombudsman, it was good to have you on the show today.
And you are welcome. Thank you.
Mpanda.
Yeah.
That was the Ombudsman Basilius Dyakugha filling us in on the role of his office. Thank you for watching.
A single step. A decision to open the door, to see what's out there. To see what's inside you, what the world has to offer, what you can give, what you're made of as you dream about what you can make. You will build and you will fall, but each day you will be wiser, stronger, and above the rest. You will soar. And one day, even as you keep moving forward, you'll pause to take a look back. You'll reflect on all you've learned, on all you've seen and everything you have done. And you'll be grateful you took that first single step on a journey of discovery at the Northwest University.